I followed my wife one Friday night because my instincts refused to stay quiet. I thought I was about to catch a lie that would end my marriage forever. I was wrong. The truth waiting for me was far darker than anything my imagination could have created, and I still wish I had turned around.
My name is Daniel, and for 9 years, my wife, Olivia, had been the center of my world. We built an ordinary life outside Chicago with steady jobs, weekend barbecues, and dreams of finally starting a family. Nothing about our life looked broken, which made what happened even harder to understand.
We met at a bookstore after reaching for the same novel, and she laughed before letting me have it. That tiny moment turned into coffee, then countless dates, and eventually a wedding surrounded by everyone we loved. She wasn't just my wife. She was the person who made every bad day feel survivable. Life settled into a comfortable rhythm that felt almost too perfect. We cooked together, argued over which shows to binge, and danced in the kitchen when no one was watching. Friends joked that we were the couple everyone secretly envied, and honestly, I believed them. Then little things started changing in ways I couldn't explain. Olivia began taking late-night phone calls outside, turning her screen away whenever I walked into the room. She smiled less, answered questions with one-word replies, and kept saying work had become overwhelming. I wanted to believe her, so I did. One evening, she canceled our anniversary dinner because of an emergency meeting. I tried not to overreact, but something inside me refused to settle. When she came home after midnight, she smelled like rain instead of perfume, and her eyes looked exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with work. The following week, I noticed cash disappearing from our emergency savings. Not huge amounts, just enough to make me wonder if I had forgotten spending it myself. When I finally asked her about it, she hesitated for a second before saying she had paid for office supplies and forgot to mention it. That hesitation haunted me more than the answer itself. My wife had always been painfully honest, even about embarrassing mistakes. Now every explanation sounded rehearsed, as if she had practiced it before walking through the front door. I hated myself for doubting her, but the doubts refused to leave. Friday arrived, and Olivia said she had another late meeting. She kissed my forehead instead of my lips, grabbed her purse, and drove away. I stood at the window for several minutes before making the worst decision of my life. I picked up my keys and quietly followed her. She didn't drive toward her office downtown. Instead, she headed across the city into an older neighborhood I had never visited. Every turn she made tightened the knot in my stomach. My mind raced through every terrible possibility, and each one felt more believable than the last. She finally parked outside a small brick building with no sign except a faded number above the entrance. I stayed half a block away, watching her disappear inside carrying a plain white envelope. It wasn't a hotel, it wasn't a restaurant. Somehow, that made everything even more unsettling. 20 minutes passed before another car pulled up. A middle-aged man stepped out, looked around nervously, and entered the same building. My heart sank. Every suspicion I had buried suddenly came rushing back. I convinced myself I was watching my marriage collapse in real time. Unable to wait any longer, I crossed the street and approached the entrance. Voices echoed faintly from inside, but I couldn't make out the words. My hand trembled as I reached for the door. Part of me prayed it was locked. It wasn't. The hallway smelled like old paint and coffee. At the end was a room with soft light spilling through a cracked doorway. I expected laughter, whispered flirting, maybe betrayal. Instead, I heard someone crying so hard it sounded painful to breathe. I peeked inside and froze. About a dozen people sat in folding chairs arranged in a circle.
Olivia stood near the center holding tissues while speaking gently to an elderly woman whose hands wouldn't stop shaking. This wasn't an affair. It looked like some kind of support group. Relief hit me so fast my knees almost gave out, but confusion replaced it immediately. Why would she hide something like this? Why lie about meetings and missing money? None of it made sense, and I couldn't leave without knowing the truth. As the meeting ended, I stepped back into the shadows before anyone noticed me. Olivia remained behind, helping stack chairs and cleaning coffee cups. Her smile looked genuine for the first time in weeks, but there was also sadness in her eyes I'd never seen before. She eventually walked outside carrying an empty donation box. Before she reached her car, I called her name. She spun around and every bit of color drained from her face. She looked terrified, not guilty. That reaction scared me more than anything else that night. She whispered, "How long have you been here?" I admitted everything. I told her I'd followed her because I thought she was lying about someone else. Tears filled her eyes instantly, but they weren't angry tears. They were the tears of someone carrying a burden alone for far too long. Olivia sat on the curb and asked me to sit beside her. For several minutes, neither of us spoke. The silence felt heavier than any argument we'd ever had. Finally, she took a deep breath and said, "There's something I never wanted you to see." She explained the building belonged to a non-profit supporting families of missing adults. 6 months earlier, she'd met a woman at work whose son had vanished without a trace. That conversation shattered her because it reminded her of something she'd buried since childhood. When Olivia was 10 years old, her older sister disappeared after walking home from school. Despite years of investigations, no answers ever came. Her parents eventually stopped talking about it because the pain became unbearable. But Olivia never truly healed. She simply learned to hide the wound. Helping those families became her way of honoring the sister she never got to say goodbye to. She volunteered every Friday, donated money quietly, and listened to strangers whose heartbreak mirrored her own. She hid it because she didn't want that old tragedy defining our marriage. I couldn't believe she'd carried that weight beside me for nearly a decade without letting me share it. She admitted she feared I'd look at her differently, like someone permanently damaged. Instead, I felt ashamed that my first instinct had been suspicion instead of concern. Then she said something that broke me completely. Lately, I've been distant because one of the volunteers found a possible lead about my sister. My heart stopped. After more than 25 years, someone believed there might finally be an answer. The white envelope she'd carried contained old photographs and DNA paperwork requested by investigators reopening several cold cases. She hadn't wanted to tell me until there was something concrete, because she couldn't survive watching hope disappear one more time. Suddenly, every secret finally fit together. Over the next month, I attended every meeting with her. I met parents who refused to stop searching, brothers who kept birthdays alive for siblings they hadn't seen in decades, and volunteers who gave strangers the strength to keep believing. My understanding of grief changed forever. The investigation ultimately confirmed that none of the new evidence matched Olivia's sister. The lead ended exactly like countless others before it. That night, I expected Olivia to fall apart completely. Instead, she quietly hugged another family whose own search had just begun. Driving home, she admitted something that still echoes in my mind. She said, "Closure isn't always finding the answer. Sometimes closure is refusing to let love disappear just because certainty never arrives." I realized she'd been teaching hope to other people while silently fighting her own despair. I often think about the moment I decided to follow my wife. I expected to uncover betrayal, but I uncovered invisible pain hiding in plain sight. Sometimes the people we love aren't keeping secrets because they don't trust us. They're protecting the parts of themselves that hurt the most.
If this story reminded you that every person carries battles you can't always see, don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and share it with someone you care about. And remember this before assuming the worst about someone you love. Sometimes the truth is heartbreaking, but it isn't betrayal.